Hi, it's Jen, and welcome to my channel. And on my channel, I talk about personal growth and neuroscience. And today I'm so excited to be talking to Stacy Berman. I met her at a networking event, and I was just blown away by all of the experiences that she had. So I thought she would be a great person to share with you guys today. So, oops. So Stacy is the founder of System by Stacy, a luxury line of organic whey protein powders. She holds a doctorate in natural medicine and is completing a business degree at Columbia University. Her background combines over 20 years of health and fitness industries with scientific research to reveal how our thoughts affect the way we feel. Stacy's transformative programs are sought out by individuals and companies who want to understand the science behind weight loss and self-perception. Her work has been featured on the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine, Healthline, the Doctors, ABC, NBC, and CBS. Hi.
Hello, Jen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So what I was really blown away by you is like your experience working with like a consciousness person in India and your experience working with shamans. Can you tell me, or with a shaman, can you tell me like how you got involved with working with the consciousness person first and your experience of that?
So, it's actually a funny story. So his name is Dr. Baskaran Pillai. And I believe in synchronicity myself, and it was completely synchronistic how I found him, let's say. I feel like in some ways I'm from the Bronx, so I have a very New York cynical kind of perspective on things. But then I also have this kind of openness to different experiences and possibilities. And I remember when I first started in the health and fitness industry, I was just a trainer at the time. And I had one client and we kind of got close, and I remember we finished a session and it was like 6:30 in the morning in Central Park, still completely dark out. And we were walking back to her car, and I just remember having a conversation with her and saying, there's gotta be more to life than what we see, because if this is it, there's just gotta be more. And so she kind of giggled. And we talked about it, and then she was like, would you like to learn some meditation techniques? And up until that point, I had not specifically done any meditation practices. So she started teaching me meditation techniques, and then maybe a week or two later, I was walking home, and I saw a flyer on a lamppost, literally on the corner of my house, and it said, come meet this person, and he's a teacher of meditation and spirituality and all that stuff. And so I was like, oh my God, my friend Beth, who was teaching me meditation, I was like, maybe let me call her and see if she wants to come. This is what we've been talking about, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I call her up when I get home, and I'm like, so I just saw this sign for this guy from India. Do you want to come? And she kind of giggles at me, and she said, sure, I'll come. So I didn't understand at the time what she was giggling at. But what I come to find out when we do go to the event is that the person that was, hosting the meditation was actually her teacher. Mm. And she had been teaching me his techniques. And not only that, but she was sitting with him at that moment when I called.
Oh, wow.
So again, it was just kind of, it just happened. I just, I feel like in all of my experiences, that saying of when you are ready, it will come kind of thing. And I think I was ready, and, the universe saw to it that I found the right person. Mm-hmm. So that was my first segue into specific training on consciousness studies. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the technique?
So we worked a lot with meditation and sound healing. He's from India, so specifically we worked with a lot of Hindu mantras. But as we broke it down, what I've come to understand, and then also through my research and through my PhD program have come to understand, is that what makes up matter is not actually solid. When you break it down to its smallest units, it's just vibrations of energy and information. And so sound is a vibration. So working with these different mantras or sounds has the capacity to affect not only your state of mind, but literally your genetic makeup, your cells, your subatomic particles, and the field of energy in and around you.
Mm-hmm. And so in your study of natural medicine, have you gone into learned anything about neuroscience yet?
Yes.
Okay. And so what kind of neuroscience stuff is happening when we meditate?
So actually, it's very interesting. So there's a bunch of different studies that I've read, but so specifically with sound vibration or sound meditation and sound healing, what they found was that different types of sounds, whether it's musical instruments, whether it's mantras that you're reciting, that they have the ability to get you into a meditative / transcendental space, which for me is completely fascinating. On a number of levels, but one of the really interesting things about sound meditation and neuroscience is that I think people have, in general, short attention spans, and they are very chattery in their mind, and it's hard for them to kind of shut off their prefrontal cortex, and it's like, bah, 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 bah. Mm-hmm. So sound has the ability to create. Have you ever heard of, I'm sure you have because you studied this, but hypotransient prefrontality?
I don't know if I've learned about that specifically, but based off of the words, I can try to figure out what that means. But what is that in layman's terms?
So this part, the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive functioning part of the brain, gets kind of decreased, but it increases the ability of the brain to connect to other parts. And so you're, in essence, getting into a state of flow where you become, I don't even know what the right word is, but you become more aware, but not through conscious thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're more aware through your senses, and you're that mental chatter is, the volume's down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to definitely.
So sound vibration, sound mantras, that kind of thing has the ability to do that. Also, interestingly enough, different smells have the capacity to do that as well.
Yeah. And when you first started meditating, did you have any expectations? I know some people who they think that meditating is going to be this magical thing that happens. And then they're like, I'm having thoughts, it's not working. Did that ever happen for you?
I think that I was just listening to a podcast, and one of the guys who teaches meditation and wrote a meditation book, he said, what meditation does, it allows you to become a connoisseur of your own dysfunction, which I love that. And I think what he kind of meant by that, and what I agree with, is that meditation is not the end all be all of healing or, growing or whatever it is. It's a practice that helps you recognize your own patterns. And we will never be rid of our patterns. That's who we are. It's kind of wired into our nervous system to think, feel, and behave certain ways. But when we can observe them from a kind of step back, then we can start kind of guiding them along the way to be, kind of make better choices for ourselves, let's say. So so to answer your question, there have been times where I've, sat down to meditate or done walking meditations, and I can't focus on anything, but that's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is a significant part of the meditation practice. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, especially in India, a lot of these practices started out for monks to do these meditations, and they kind of leave society. But like a lot of us are householders, are people who like are living a life and want to practice meditation.
Right.
So when you were learning it through this Indian man, did he address that concept of like householders and versus monks?
Yeah, I mean, so he was, one of the things that was very interesting about him was that he said that, I mean, he used the term God, whether or not you believe in that, or universe, or whatever it is. He said God is 100% material and 100% spiritual, which is the first time that I've ever heard a spiritual teacher say that.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I think there's this ingrained idea that you should be suffering to be spiritual. And so that was one of the things that attracted me to him. So yes, he did teach meditation with this idea that you're not going to go be a monk. You're going to be living in this world and be part of the material world. So I think one of the things that we should all remember is that you don't have to go into the mountain and meditate for 8 hours a day and sit under a tree and not talk to anyone. Meditation has a benefit, even if you do it 5, 10 minutes or 1 minute a day. And there are other ways. Meditation is not just about sitting there quiet with your eyes closed. I mean, I practice Muay Thai, which is a Thai kickboxing, and I consider that somewhat of a meditation because it is one particular moment in time where the only thing I'm focused on is that. And that can be considered a meditation because everything else gets shut off. I'm not thinking about this or that or work or to-do list or laundry. I'm just thinking of crushing pads. No, I'm kidding. I'm just thinking of doing what I'm doing. The other benefit that movement has in terms of meditation is that it does also shut off the prefrontal cortex while you're doing it, when you're doing high enough intensity exercise. So what I find is right after I finish a intense workout, to sit for about 5 minutes before the prefrontal cortex starts kind of kicking back on, that little bit of time really helps me center myself without the chatter taking over.
Yeah. And how has meditation benefited you? Since you started it, what things have you noticed, or what made you love meditation when you first started?
I think a few things. I think that, I've done, you refer to it, but I've done, excuse me, my nose itches. I was an apprentice to a Native American shaman. So we did deep meditation. We've done medicine journeys, which, included taking psilocybin and ayahuasca. And in those versions of deep exploration and meditation, and in the lighter versions where maybe it's just me walking or sitting in a park, I've had some major insights into my own self, sometimes my own dysfunctions, and then also deep and profound insights into myself and my place in the world. And I think without these, I maybe wouldn't have been as confident as I am in my path. I've had some vivid visuals and experiences in these meditative states. And if I had not had those previously, I may have given up a bunch of times, but I've had those visuals and I knew that that's where I was supposed to be. And so even if it was not happening right now in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
I knew for a fact that that's where I was going. So it kind of kept me motivated on that path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So what was that path that you like found in meditation and like that you so strongly saw and felt?
So this is a much longer in-depth question, but for example, so today, right now, and maybe for the last few years, I could say with 100% confidence that I am a healer. If you would have asked me 20 years ago when I first started training with Dr. Baskaran Pillai, or 10, 11 years ago when I was apprenticing to the shaman, I was a trainer at that point. And if someone would have said, or even I didn't even feel comfortable thinking or feeling or saying out loud that I am a healer. Mm-hmm. But as I got deeper into meditation and these different practices, that idea kept getting reinforced in me that I am a healer. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? I'm a trainer. Like I work the physical body, and I guess on some level that's healing. But now, the trajectory of my life has been trainer, certified nutrition specialist, consciousness studies, apprentice to a shaman, Reiki master, doctorate in natural medicine. And now I'm here standing at this point and I'm like, oh, I am a healer. Duh. So again, I've had enough experiences that pointed me in that direction, but I don't know if I would have got there naturally without having that understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And so in your System by Stacy and how does like all the Reiki and all these like consciousness things integrate into your product?
So, I mean, first and foremost, the physical body is the vehicle with which we experience the world as it is. So when I work with people, the first thing and the most tangible thing is getting the body to some state of health. Now, of course, our thoughts and emotions and whether or not we feel like we have a purpose in this life have also real and measurable effects on our physical body and our state of mind. It's all, interconnected. But the body, I always start with the body because conceptually, people understand that a lot more. So the System by Stacy is just that. It's all of my experience and knowledge about nutrition and the body's needs packaged into a, if I may, beautiful bottle. So that's and then the rest of the program is obviously there's the body component, and then when I work one-on-one with people or groups or corporations, it's all about getting all of those, what I call them, the selves, into alignment. So body, mind, emotions, and then purpose. So
okay.
Once we get those kind of selves in line, then you enter into a state of flow, where it's not just the chattery mind, like I have to do this, I have to do that, but you're actually using a lot more of your mind and connecting not only more with yourself, but also with everything and everyone around you.
Mm-hmm. So you said it's body, mind, and then emotions?
Body, mind, emotions, and purpose.
Purpose. Okay.
Yeah. It's so funny because I think that if you think of those words, body, mind, spirit, people often think of that as a kind of, woo-woo, spiritual, sometimes nonsense. But really, if you look at it, let's say your body is healthy and you're doing everything quote unquote right. And like psychologically and mentally, you're like, okay. But if you feel like something is missing, if you feel like you're lacking in a direction or a purpose in your life, that absolutely will affect your thoughts, feelings, and physiology.
Mm-hmm.
One thought can release up to, I think, 30,000 different neurochemicals, which instantly translates to a change in the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're living a life that you're not at least enjoying or feel fulfilled by, then that's going to affect your state of health.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Can you go more into that? Like, I don't know if it's like too like scientific, but like, how does one thought do that?
So, I mean, so one thought will release a neurochemical. So, I mean, how it happens, and I'm sure you know, but we'll go over it. So you have a thought, and then the body picks up on that thought that you have and releases chemicals in line with that thought. And then you start feeling whatever those feelings are that are associated with that thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mind, the nervous system, starts picking up on the biochemicals in your body and starts thinking in line with the way that you're feeling. And then it reinforces that thinking, feeling cycle. And then in a very real way, you become biochemically attached to that state of thinking.
Yeah.
So, which is, if you tend to think more negatively, then that kind of sucks because you literally get stuck in that and you don't see any other way out. So that's actually one of the ways that I work with people, is getting them to change their thought patterns in order to change their biochemical release, in order to then reinforce and change their perspective on things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you have like a negative thought and it scares you, and then it uses your fight or flight system, so the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system.
Exactly.
Then you're like stressed and you're creating cortisol, and then you're putting on weight because of that extra cortisol.
Exactly.
So like that's like definitely true that your thought can affect your body and then everything.
But the other thing that I just read this study, which was completely fascinating, and it said that boredom may release the same amount of stress hormones that stress actually does. So kind of back to that idea of your purpose. If you're like bored in your life, then you're still releasing stress hormones in the body.
Wow.
Yes.
I love that. And you can definitely see that in people. Like I know people who don't know their purpose, and they're like, just like, well, like they might be stressed about silly things, or they just like feel like nothing's worth it. And that's the type of life they're living.
Yeah. So
you did the shaman stuff before the consciousness stuff.
No, I started the consciousness stuff many years ago, probably in my 20s. And then the shaman, maybe the last 10, 11, 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. How did you find out about that and go down that?
So actually I found Israel through one of the people in my meditation group. He had gone to see her, and I was in a pretty, speaking of patterns, I was in a very dark cycle pattern of my life. And it was like the universe was saying to me, like, you got to stop this. This is not good for you. And it culminated in this really bad experience. And I was really just not in a good place. And I was like, I need something, something has to change here. And, unbeknownst to him, he didn't have any idea that this was going on, but he invited me to go see her. And I went to see her. And at that point I wasn't in an apprenticeship with her. I had just gone to see her for, to try to heal. And we did a medicine journey, and it was fascinating because I had experimented with different type of hallucinogenic drugs and psychedelic drugs, in college recreationally. But so I went to see her, and the first medicine journey that I ever did with her was with psilocybin. And I just saw the pattern of my life in symbolic form, and also saw the healing of it. And it was so profound that I didn't know, I didn't know what to do with it. I just felt like something had shifted so intensely in me in a weekend that I was drawn to it. I was like, I didn't know what was going on at that point in terms of like, the healing and the neuroscience of it or anything like that. But I was completely drawn to it because it had such an impact on me personally. So then I went back to see her, a number of times, again, without necessarily the intention of doing a full-on apprenticeship. And, again, as the universe kind of gives you when you are ready, eventually I got to the point where I started apprenticing with her. And it's been profound. Yeah.
And through that apprenticeship, like, are you technically a shaman, or how does that work?
So yes, so technically, and I think, this goes back to my being from the Bronx in New York. I think my brain still is like, you're a shaman. I mean, technically, yes, I've gone through the process of it, and I've worked with people in that capacity. And so yes, technically I am. The same thing that I was referring to earlier, where like if somebody said you're a healer, a number of years ago, I would have been like, ooh, that sounds weird. And I think the whole shaman thing still sounds a little weird to me, but in terms of the practical application of it, yes, I am.
Yeah. And it's just like that, like having that higher understanding of things, it like shows up in the way you heal. So even if like people don't know that you're a shaman, like kind of doing shaman like work on them.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So.
Wow. That's so amazing. And shamanism, is it always like using like different types of drugs, or do you also sometimes just do like journeys with like a drum and like people go on their own thing without like taking anything? Or how, like, I just like coming from someone that doesn't know too much about shamanism.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, a lot of the work that I've done, personally, the work that I've done on myself, but also with the people that I work with, it's not necessarily based on medicine journeys. But I personally find that those types of journeys are really helpful because they have the capacity to connect with deeper memories, forgotten memories, bring them up to the conscious level, and then allow you to work through them at a much more sped up pace. And possibly you may not ever access them. So I do think they're very, very, very useful tools that one can use, but you don't have to. There are also other practices that you can do. And like I said, if the things you need to work through and heal from are so deep that your conscious mind does not connect in any way to them, then it's harder to access them because you don't know necessarily that they're there.
Yeah.
So I think that the medicine journeys, like I said, have the ability to access those things much quicker. So, but again, I guess not everyone is always ready to do that, which I would totally honor as well. And in that instance, I would work with them in ways that they are more comfortable, but still kind of pushing them a little bit beyond what they're comfortable with. Because as we know, you don't actually grow unless you get pushed a little bit beyond your comfort zone. I personally prefer the method of hit me in the head with a frying pan until I get it.
Yeah. So that kind of like takes care of the mind and emotions in some way. And then for like when purpose comes in, how do you help people find their purpose? Do you find that people usually, even if they say they don't know their purpose, like somewhere in them, they know what their purpose is? Or how do you help them?
Absolutely. I mean, there's always, I mean, if you just look at their lives, there's typically indications of who they are at a fundamental level, what their strengths are. Sometimes when I work with people, like I ask them, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And that actually is a pretty relevant question, because when you're a child, you're not yet socialized to think you should be this or should do that. So that's going to be a much more authentic answer. So, you know, that's kind of one of the ways. But then often, so yes, I do think it's in you already to know, but most people have shut that part of themselves out. So for me, my work is typically removing those blocks so that you could start understanding that stuff at a deeper level, and then hopefully take action on those things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And then tell us a little bit about your experience getting your PhD in natural medicine. What did you study while you were there?
So my field of focus was called psychoneuroimmunology, how your thoughts affect your nervous system, affect your immune system, metabolism, and all that stuff. The program that I was in taught these kind of traditional healing practices through the principles of quantum physics. So we looked at these practices through a scientific lens. And when you look through that lens and you look at like the subatomic particles and how they interact, then you can start understanding how these somewhat, you know, spiritually or traditionally based practices are actually working. So that was why it really combined for me the like cynical New York mind, because I want to know what's going on, with the, well, I've had all these experiences and I don't necessarily know what's going on, but I know them to be true because I had them. So going back to school for my PhD really was in part, I mean, as with everything I do in my life, I started training professionally because I wanted to be fit. So like, I was like, I'm going to be fit and I'm going to learn about this. And so the PhD was just kind of an extension of that, which is I want to know what's going on. I want to know why I've had these experiences and how they're working for me personally. And then, you know, once I have somewhat of an understanding, then work with people in this capacity. So, yeah.
So is understanding the medicine journeys part of what you were learning, or was it more about like what types of foods make you like feel certain ways in your body, or does it also include the medicine journeys?
I mean, in the program we did a lot. I mean, it was very holistic. So there was a nutrition component. One of the courses I did was called, it was neurodietetics. So, and we talked all about and read studies all on how, obviously, how diet affects the body, but also how different nutrients and minerals have been shown to improve states of mental health and wellness, and vice versa, how in patients who suffer from, let's say, schizophrenia, if you introduce these different vitamins and minerals, that their symptoms decrease or go away. So again, yes, so part of it was the nutrition component, but also some of it was different traditional modalities that we went through. So Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, shamanism, sound healing, that kind of acupuncture kind of thing. Yeah.
So like, did you learn about like, how does psilocybin affect the brain, and like, how does like ayahuasca?
Yeah, so we didn't cover that, but in essence, my understanding, so my understanding of it is that, for example, what is it? MDMA. So MDMA has been used actually in clinical studies and for therapy to help people who suffer from PTSD reduce their symptoms. And I think, and excuse me, I think that this is what they found, was that what happens is it allows so what happens in PTSD is that in essence, the part of the brain that is responsible for intense emotions, that is hypersensitive. So in your present state of life, although there might not be any actual threats or anything like that, that part of the brain is so triggered that it keeps firing, and you're in this perpetual state of stress, let's say.
Yeah.
And so doing the MDMA allows that part of the brain to kind of relax and get associated with more feelings of love and peace, and allows that stress to kind of dissipate through the body and the nervous system. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That's really cool. I'll have to look more into that. And
I'll send you some
yeah.
stuff. And I think also with the like psilocybin, so MDMA is not necessarily it's not a hallucinogenic or psychedelic drug. Ayahuasca and psilocybin are psychedelic drugs, and I think what happens with that is it turns off, again, the prefrontal cortex. It turns off the parts of the brain, or not turns off, but decreases the activity in the parts of the brain that are kind of socialized to think or see things in a certain way. So if you see children when they're first born, they look, if you look at their eyes, they kind of look like they're tripping balls. And that's because their brain waves their brains have not developed yet. They've not developed to get into what we're using right now is the beta brain wave, right? So that's the conscious awareness brain wave state that we're working in right now. Meditation and hypnosis and dream state work in the alpha, theta, and delta brain waves. So big kids and babies don't have their brains have not yet developed to be in the beta brainwave, the like rational thinking mind. So I think back to the point that when you do these different types of medicines, ayahuasca and psilocybin, it brings you automatically into those deeper states of brainwave and allow you to access the subconscious mind where all of your information is stored. So the conscious mind processes about 30 or 40 bits of information in 1 second. The subconscious mind processes between, I think, about 20 million bits in 1 second. So it's exponentially greater in its capacity to detect different things. And this is where really all of your thoughts, feelings, behaviors are stored, which is, I mean, we need this, otherwise we would be totally inundated with thoughts and signals, and we would just be paralyzed with too much information. So during medicine journey, you're able to access those things. And because that's the kind of storage space of all of your experiences, those experiences that have been wired into your nervous system that are potentially affecting you in a negative way, you could start accessing and then bringing them up to conscious awareness and releasing.
Awesome. And then you were also saying, so like to deal with like mental illness, you've like found like different like minerals and foods that like help with that kind of thing. Yeah. What are some of those minerals that we should know about, or foods?
That one I'll have to get back to you on. I took that a long time ago. But I will send it to you, and maybe you could connect it in the notes.
Wow. Yeah, that's so exciting. And so going back to like the system by Stacy, so you're kind of working with the food and you're also working with the mind and how we think in a way to like make it all together, just like the healthiest experience possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so awesome. And then you also have the Naked podcast, which is a really fun podcast.
So the Naked podcast was born out of the idea and partly born out of my my dissertation research. Like I said, I came from the health and fitness industry. I've worked with thousands of people, primarily women, in New York City. And what I found was that no matter what the woman looked like on the outside, whether, she was, conventionally beautiful or not or whatever, there was always this internal negative dialogue going on, specifically about what she looked like. So kind of coming from my background of consciousness studies and shaman apprenticeship and just like understanding kind of the mind-body connection, I wondered, well, what's going on? If I know for certain that one thought releases up to 30,000 different neurochemicals and affects your nervous system and all that, then what's going on with women when they perceive themselves in a negative light? And how does that affect them? And how does that affect not only the way that they interact with themselves in the world, but also how does that affect their physiology? Mm-hmm. So again, in my dissertation, I found that, yes, absolutely, the self-perception has real and measurable effects on the overall immune system and metabolism and cell reproduction, all that stuff. And so the Naked podcast was born out of the idea of trying to help women shift their self-perception, and also have kind of fun and meaningful conversations with my co-hosts and guests, and hopefully help people in the audience that are listening.
Mm-hmm. How, in that research, how was it measured how the person's thoughts affected their physiology?
So my research was so we did pretty much basic things. We had an intake form to kind of figure out where on the scale of body image disorder they had, and I would just say that overall, I'm going to say 99%, and I'm only saying that because obviously nothing is 100%, but 99% of the women that I have worked with and known have had or presently have some sort of body image disorder to a certain extent. So what we did was I was able to figure out, what scale they were at, and then we had obviously the control group, and then we had the research group where we did not only diet and exercise type things, but also mindset exercises to help them shift their mindset. And we did find a significant loss in weight associated with the group that also did the mindset training.
Okay. And so what was done in the mindset training? Was it like affirmations?
So the affirmations work to a certain level. I think, again, we're talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So affirmations are working at the conscious level. And 95% of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are based off of subconscious processing. So which means 5% of our thoughts, feelings, and actions are based off of our conscious processing. So affirmations are good, but it's only 5% of what's actually going on. So what we try to do, and what I've tried to do with people, is start accessing some of the subconscious wiring and then releasing it through there. So an easy way to do that is a very simple one is gratitude journaling, specifically on their physical bodies. So what happens in the society we live in? We typically are trained to compare ourselves to what we see in the media. And as a result of that, we always look at ourselves and kind of scan for what's wrong with our bodies. So we literally wire our brains to always look for what's wrong. So with gratitude journaling, it trains them, it prunes back the neural pathways that are associated with scanning for what's wrong with our bodies, and starts to build and strengthen neural pathways that are associated with scanning for what's right. So that's a very simple one. Also, it allows another exercise that we do is I just have them write down something positive that happened in relation to their body that day. And again, what that does is by writing it down, it reinforces, it allows the brain to kind of relive that moment and reinforces those neural pathways that are associated with that positive experience. So it's a lot of the work. I mean, obviously there's a lot more to that, but those are two really basic, really easy things that one can do. And if you do it consistently, then after a few weeks, you actually see a big difference, not only obviously in your outlook and your mindset towards yourself, but also you'll see changes in your waistline.
I'm surprised this isn't already like a headline on like Cosmo magazine being like, gratitude will make you lose weight. Do you remember how much the weight loss difference was between the exercising group and the mindset and exercising group?
So, obviously it depended on how much weight each person had to use. So we went more in percentages. So the percentages were close to 10 to 15% more.
Wow.
When we did the mindset techniques as well.
Wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then you also mentioned to me that you were writing a book.
Yes. So the book is based off of the dissertation research, and the book is called Love Yourself Naked: The Science of Self-Perception, Spirituality, and Weight Loss. And it really just kind of takes into all of the research that I've done and all the experiences that I've had with my clients, as well as some of the research that's coming out now, which is completely fascinating. I think you and I talked about, well, you mentioned the study, but then I remember that it was recently in the New York Times, maybe a few months ago, about
I think they were hotel maids.
Hotel workers. Yeah, right, exactly. And that just by thinking that they were doing more activity, they actually lost more weight when there wasn't any actual change in behavior. So it was just the thought of it affected their body in a way that they lost weight. So that's exactly the same thing. So that's exactly the same that I'm doing, except it's changing your self-perception.
Very cool. And also, it's like if someone's eating an unhealthy food, but they think it's healthy, could that also maybe be balancing out and helping them?
Wait, repeat that question.
So it's like if someone is eating an unhealthy food, like say they're drinking a green juice that like has like actually just like artificial sugars in it that like they're not aware of, like are they doing better than thinking like, oh, this is unhealthy for me to drink?
Well, I mean, there's also a component of being fucking honest with yourself.
Yeah, right.
Like I work with a lot of people and they're like, I eat really healthy. I eat organic granola and this and that. And I'm like, all right, look, healthy is one thing, but that's also very, very high in sugar.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a component to being like honest with yourself.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, placebo, I forgot what it was, but I think I was listening to an interview by an MD, and he said that something ridiculous number, and I might misquote him, but it was a ridiculously high percent. I think he said like 30 to 50% of pharmaceutical drugs are primarily based off of their health benefits are primarily based off of the placebo effect.
Yeah.
That like, it's mostly because the people believe it's going to work and it works.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating. So again, back to your idea of like, if it's a green juice full of like, artificial sweeteners and blah, 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 Yes, I guess technically it is healthier to believe that it's healthy.
Yeah, but it'd also be
Also
healthier to
be
eat
honest with
healthy
yourself.
food. Yeah. Yeah, the healthiest thing is to eat healthy food and know that it's healthy and eat it. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh, the placebo is like a whole nother huge thing. Did you study that at all while you were learning about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's fascinating. There's who's one of my professors? I forget her name. I have to like send you all of these books now, so you can put them in the your notes. But I forgot her name, but she wrote a whole book, also an MD, but wrote a whole book on the placebo effect. I mean, I'm sure you've read the studies where there were people who have had, like, let's say they had to get knee surgery, and half of the group actually got knee surgery, and then another half of the group, they just opened the knee and then sewed it back up. So the person would believe that they actually got surgery, but there was no surgery done. And they had, drastic improvements in knee function after that. And again, it was all placebo.
Yeah.
Nothing actually changed.
Yeah. Have you ever read How to Heal Your Back Pain?
No.
So I'm listening to it on Audible right now. And I remember someone mentioning it, like they're using it for like, it's like basically they said it can be a mindset book used for anything, but it was initially just made for like back pain, and just explaining how like most back pain is just like based off of like stuff in your mind. And like people think, oh, it's because I had whiplash like 10 years ago. Yeah. And the doctor's explaining like there's no way that like our bodies are stronger than that. You're not going to be hurt by whiplash. It's like your body is holding stress.
Right.
And it's like, and once people understand that, like it goes away faster. So I just like love all these like things.
So I have an interesting experience to share, because I also had crazy back pain, and I don't mind sharing. It's a little private, but what I referred to when I first went to see Israel the shaman was I had an abortion, and I was 31 years old at the time, which is, prime time if you're looking to have a kid, probably a good time to have one. And so it was a very hard decision for me, but I decided the best decision was to have an abortion. And in essence, that was a definitive, not conscious statement, but it was an energetic, definitive statement of, I am not mother. I will not do that. And I had always believed that in terms of not wanting to be a mother. I never wanted to have children. So part of my work with Israel has been working through that abortion, working through the idea of being a mother, and being that nurturing energy. And in the midst of all this, I used to get tremendous back pain, and like literally spazzing in the middle of the night, where I had to roll over and like kind of huddle into a ball to stretch it. I couldn't touch my toes, and it was debilitating pain. And I remember one of the last, maybe this was probably 4 years ago, let's say, I had gone out to see Israel, and we did the medicine journey, and we were out on this ceremonial land, and I went walking, and I found this circle. It was I know it was a circle. I didn't know what it was at the time, but there were stones placed in a circle. So I was like, oh, what's this? So I sat in the middle, and as I'm sitting there, I'm having this conversation. And the conversation, whether it's like my inner self or the universe or whoever it is, I'm having this conversation. And the conversation went something like this. The universe was saying, you are mother. Me as human form was saying, no, I'm not. We've gone through this already. The universe was saying, you are mother. Me saying, no, I'm not. And it literally felt like the energy of like parental as the universe, with like a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum, that being me. And this went back and forth for however long, who knows. And eventually the idea hit me that, oh, I am mother even if I don't have a biological child. My energy is that of healer, nurturer, creator kind of thing. And as soon as that idea hit me, literally I felt the only thing I could compare it to is an electric, not a painful shock, but electricity passing through my body, and my lower back pain in an instant disappeared completely. Wow. And I've never had lower back pain after that. And then, of course, there's processing that's done after medicine journey. And I sat and I was talking to Israel, and I was saying, I had this experience of like, no, I'm not mother. Okay, yes, I am. And as soon as I said, okay, yes, I am, my lower back stopped hurting. And I was like, what is that about? And she's like, well, what does a mother do? And I'm like, well, a mother kind of like supports and nurtures and provides nourishment for you. And she was like, and what does your back do, your spine? And I was like, well, it supports and nurtures and, oh my God. So what happened was my rejection of this idea of mother was manifesting in my nervous system, was manifesting in my support system. And as soon as I kind of gave into that or accepted that and took it on as me, then there was no reason for my back, because in my understanding, your body and mind and emotions will give you signs. Typically they're somewhat subtle unless you don't listen. And in order to get you to listen, it has to make the signal stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until you fucking listen. And so my lower back pain, what I understand now, my lower back pain had been the culmination of me rejecting this idea of mother, and my inner self saying, yes, you are, and me rejecting it, and yes, you are, and me rejecting it, until it became so overwhelming that I couldn't avoid it anymore. And
wow.
Yeah. So that's, so to your point about like back pain is all in the mind kind of thing, I can 100% agree with that.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that story. And I feel like that really exemplifies like what you were talking about when you said, you had these profound experiences on these medicine journeys, and like, you could just like feel it and understand it, like hearing that story.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating to me, because I believe you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Like it was manifesting in your back. And then I also want to like understand the neuroscience and like figure that all out yet. And I don't know if it's all like explainable in science yet, but I definitely believe it. Yeah. And I think it also can be explained. Like, I think some people think that like magical things, like if you explain it and understand it, it's no longer magical, but I'm not in that boat. I think it's like still good to understand it both ways.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it doesn't make it any less magical. I mean, I had another experience, and I'll share this one as well. That was, I would say like mid to late 20s. I stopped getting my period. I didn't get my period for 4.5 years. And, on the outside, I was like, this is great. I don't need that. But initially I had gone to my doctor and asked, like, is this healthy? Are there going to be long-term repercussions to not getting my period? He said, no, for right now it's fine, unless and at that time, it was only like 6 months that I hadn't had it. And he was like, but I can give you progesterone and you can take it for 10 days and it'll trigger your period. And I said, no, I mean, if you're telling me this is not a problem, I don't necessarily want it. I just want there's not going to be any issues. So 4.5 years later, I probably should have gone back, but 4.5 years later, I still hadn't got my period. And I was like, I think this is, all right, I should probably do something here. So I went back to a different doctor, prescribed the same thing, progesterone for 10 days. So I remember picking up the prescription on Friday, and I didn't want to ruin the weekend because I wasn't sure how my body would react to the progesterone. I was like, I'm going to do it on Monday and like enjoy the weekend. So Sunday I woke up and I got my period.
Wow.
Sunday, before I took the pills.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this was just one of the experiences where it was seemingly magical. But again, going back to, research that has been done, it's not magical, looks magical, but it's not. Your body and mind are one system. To even say body and mind creates this idea of duality, but there isn't duality. Yeah. It's one unit. So of course my thoughts will have a very tremendous impact on my physiology. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I've had so many of those experiences where it wasn't just, we were talking about earlier that like meditation has allowed me to access parts of myself that not only help me like kind of relax and do all that stuff, but understand, my larger purpose in this world. But also I've had experiences that were tangible. My lower back stopped hurting. I got my period after 4.5 years. So these aren't just like out there, what's my life purpose kind of concept. These are real things that I've experienced. And so for me, that it's not necessarily conclusive proof on exactly what's happening, but something is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if it's just like that, our bodies like in themselves are so wise and hold so much wisdom, and like that in itself is like sacred. Like even if it's not magic, it's like, I mean, it's still awesome and like amazing. And maybe like, you could call it magic if you want to, but it's like, it still has like a wisdom to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, really, I think that humans are capable of so much more than we are socialized to believe. I personally believe that we're born and we believe, and then we're socialized to not believe.
Yeah.
And, part of what I like to work with people on is getting them to believe again. And then showing them and proving them that this stuff actually has real effects on you.
Yeah. And I'm sure that'll be a lot in your book as well. Like when you talk about your clients and all those stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you, Jen. It was wonderful.
Yeah. All right. I'll end the recording.